David, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so curious to find out more about you. So you do hypnosis and you've evolved to be able to help all genders have orgasms through hypnosis. I'm really intrigued. How did your hypnosis journey start? What intrigued you in relation to hypnosis in the first place?
Thank you so much also for having me. So yes, that's really what I do now. I'm really specialized in sexuality, and hypnosis has just become one of my tools that I use in this realm, let's say. Whereas before I was really focused just on hypnotherapy. I think I started maybe 7 years ago to get really interested in hypnotherapy through lucid dreaming and how the mind works, and also processing emotions and grief I had in my personal life through imagination. And then with my wife we did a 9 months long distance relationship, and during that time I was like, okay, maybe I could use hypnosis to make her feel pleasure and make her calm, right? So this was how the idea came. Yeah.
Amazing. So you mentioned initially you got into this in order to process your own emotions and that you were experiencing grief. Was that grief through bereavement or through a different kind of loss?
Yeah, it's I lost my ex-partner in a terrorist attack in Paris.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it was so weird because through that I started really imagining things happening, like connecting with her energy, connecting with my own energy, like things that make me really happy started to get really amplified just by me imagining for it to happen. Kind of like a coping mechanism, but positive, I'd say. And I was like, wow, I'm actually doing pretty well, you know? And I was like, this is pretty incredible, and how does that work? And I started to have a lot of dreams also about it, where I could manipulate things, so lucid dreaming. And I was like, oh, this is very similar. And when I started studying, I found out that, yeah, lucid dreaming and awakened hypnosis is basically the same, even at the neurobiological level. So I was like, yeah, I really want the lucid dreaming, but in my waking life, to manipulate things.
Wow, this is really fascinating. So you're at a point in your life, you had an incredibly traumatic loss. Had you an interest in hypnosis or anything like that before then? Or had you started to kind of experience things mentally that you'd never experienced before, and then you were like, I need to find something? I'm curious about that journey.
I was a musician, I was producing music and touring a lot when that happened, and I never thought I would get into these things. I always had a certain interest in psychology, but nothing that would get me to actually really learn and make it a practice, I'd say. You know? And when that happened, and when I started to take a step back and how I was processing things, that really motivated me to know more about it.
So you can make all genders receive tremendous amounts of pleasure through just your voice. Occasionally you will touch their arms or maybe their leg or a non-sexual part of their body. So this can be across all genders. Are you noticing a difference between what happens for women and what happens for men when you use this technique?
Yeah, definitely, because there is this saying that women are naturally multi-orgasmic but non-ejaculatory, and this is the reverse for men. So men are naturally ejaculatory in terms of when it comes to experiencing an orgasm, but not multi-orgasmic. So for men, it's different, especially when I come across people and men who are not really familiar with the fact, first of all, that ejaculation and orgasm are two very distinct processes. First, to educate them, and then be able to let them have the experience. And most guys, and also straight guys, see it as something that is sexual. So for me to guide straight guys, it doesn't really happen that often, because they will feel that it goes against their sexual tendencies or identity or whatever, you know, so they get a little bit intimidated. Yeah, so that's why I have, this is the first difference, I guess.
So then how do you educate a straight guy so that he understands that actually just because you're there guiding him, he is not actually receiving pleasure from you, and it's a different process?
Yeah, so it's a lot of straight guys, I guess, that are coming to me. They're already quite educated. They know a thing or two about energy and tantra. So if I have somebody that has never done it before, and usually it happens in groups. Like a lot of guys comes during group sessions because it might be less intimidating and maybe more exciting for them to know that there are other people around and they don't feel like as targeted, let's say. But if I have someone, I need to explain the mechanism of hypnosis first, because hypnosis is not mind control. It's not me who's going to make the person feel a certain way. I set up a setting for the person to allow themselves to feel that way. So for the person to feel safe enough, for the person to feel that they can let go, that everything is taken care of. And I would definitely not give the same kind of suggestion to a straight man, anyone. It always changes. It always changes according to the person.
So for example, what might you say to a straight man compared to what you would say to a woman?
It will change, especially if we go into eroticism, because I would work with the person's fantasy and what their desire are. At the beginning, I always ask the person how they feel about pleasure, what pleasure means for them, what pleasure feels like in their body, what desire feels like in their body. And if we go into eroticism, what are their fantasies? Is there anything they want to explore? So basically, they just give me the answers of what I need to do and I just give it back to them. So a straight guy might be like, yes, I want to feel pleasure. I know I feel pleasure when I start to feel warmer and I feel aroused, obviously, when I get hard and I start to feel that vibration in my body. I start to feel also maybe blood pumping in my head or whatever. And also if they want to experience something, maybe they have a fantasy of having a threesome with two women. Something very basic for a straight man. It's the number one fantasy. This is why I use it. I would take them there. But I don't deviate from what people tell me they resonate with, actually. It's very tailored. Yeah, the person needs to understand that I'm not getting involved. I'm not putting anything personal on the table. I'm just there to facilitate and stimulate people's imagination to the point that they get fully immersed in the experience, in their inner experience. Yeah.
Amazing. Who is more susceptible to this than other people?
Well, women tend to be more suggestible or susceptible because of just the biochemistry of the brain. The logical mind, let's say the neocortex is maybe smaller, everything that is more like logical and rational, but everything that has to do with emotion and imagination and centers of pleasure are more developed in women. But I don't really believe too much in this because it's not like everybody is using their brain capacity the same way. So it depends also a lot with cultural influence and education. People in the US tend to be much more suggestible than people in Europe, for example.
Really?
Yeah.
I would have thought it was the other way around.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of, I guess, how sexually open, like if we take French people, for example, or German people, like incredibly sexually open. So therefore, I would say those are the people who are going to be able to achieve this kind of pleasure over someone from the States.
Yes, and I'm more talking about suggestible in general. There's more fiction, let's say. Fiction is more present in the American culture.
Yeah.
The capacity to believe in things that don't exist somehow, right? But it's also what drives innovation, that sparks new idea and creation and how people can, I don't know, maybe pitch an idea coming from nowhere to investors and get founded, Whereas in Europe, you need to come from somewhere, you need to have a resume, you need to have like all these criteria before you get given the right to speak, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think you're right, in the also the sexual realm, Europeans also could tend to be a little bit more open.
Yeah.
Yeah. But usually American women would maybe the most suggestible people.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah,
That's really interesting, and I like how you've explained why. So what do you do if this is not working for someone? You're doing a session with a client and you're getting nowhere.
So the thing is that it's never not working somehow. It's just maybe not taking the expected turn that the person had in mind, especially if they see my video and they're like, and they see some woman or man having like incredible orgasm so easily, they might project, they might hope that this will happen to them. But the thing is, like, it's not happening to them, they make it happen. And every time that we get into the process, it is working, but not maybe at the level or the way they wish it was working. But because of the nature of hypnosis, which is just focused attention to the point that the critical mind gets bypassed, it will always make changes. It will always create new connections in the brain. But someone who has already this connection created will feel it just more naturally than other people.
It's clear that you've changed a lot of people's lives through the work that you do. How has doing this work changed your life?
Well, for me, I think it was the first step into really sexuality work, I guess. I was definitely not expecting that I would get more into also kink and power dynamics and BDSM and all these practices before that. And that was definitely what ignited the curiosity. Because whether we want it or not, there is definitely a part of DS dynamic in this work, like a dominance submission, but in any kind of therapy anyway, you know?
Yeah.
And I started to feel the transformative potential of working with sexuality and going deeper and deeper and deeper in it because of that hypnosis practice.
How do you create a safe space for people so that they can really feel like they can experience pleasure in your presence?
So one part of the journey is definitely what we call the pre-talk. And if I've never met the person before, I can't really set up the space in a certain way. But the pre-talk in hypnosis, in any kind of session, it's really where 90% of the work is done. Is going really deep into what the person is expecting, what the person is experiencing, what are the triggers maybe that they're aware of. Especially if we go into eroticism and more dominance kind of power play. Sometimes I have people who really want to experience certain fantasies, really want me to take control of their mind, even though it's never really happening for real, but have them the impression that it's happening. So the deeper we go into that, the more the pre-talk, the negotiation process has to be precise and in-depth. And this is how you create trust. This is how I know where I'm going. This is where the person can really surrender because they know, I know where we're supposed to go. And it just takes clear, precise communication. Also, I will explain to them exactly what hypnosis is, what are my boundaries, because it's not just about them boundaries, but it's also my boundaries.
What are your boundaries?
My boundaries, I guess, I will not take people into some kind of really fucked up fantasies, like anything that is criminal, let's say. Right? I don't want to say out loud because it's kind of like projecting images, you know. But yeah, there are some fantasies that I will not guide people into.
Yeah.
Also, I will not make people feel bad about themselves, like.
So no degrading.
No degrading to a certain level, like insulting intelligence or insulting their physical appearance. So these are some of my boundaries, for example.
And you never touch your clients sexually as well?
No, never. Yeah, physical boundaries. I never have them touch me.
Do you have a code of ethics that you follow being a hypnotherapist?
So this is the thing, is like the problem with this practice is that it's outside of the ethics of hypnotherapy. So I use it in my coaching practice, but if you look into my website, the Hypno Orgasm is not within this code of ethics, actually. So this is also something that I'm really making very clear with my clients. If they want a hypnotherapy session, I won't use any touch, except for like the induction process when they are still awake, and I will stay on subjects that are more like basic, let's say.
Yeah, I guess for a hypno orgasm, you've kind of had to create your own code of ethics because there's definitely certain principles that you go by that actually are safe and are, you know, sound very sound and ethical to me. And it sounds like a great way of practicing because a lot of people enter these kind of alternative ways of, you know, like alternative therapies, treatments, all of this, and there's no code of ethics, and then, you know, chaos and disaster and all sorts of terrible things that should never happen can happen.
Yes, and when I do this session, I also usually make people fill up a form with their boundaries, with their safe words, with anything that has to do remotely or not with eroticism, even if the session doesn't have to be erotic at all. But then it's not really about ethics, but it's more about consent. Yes, so consent is king, right? This, which for me makes me feel even safer than working within this ethical realm, because there's also a lot of abuse happening in the ethical world, you know, and a lot of abuse take place within the norms. Yeah, most of them actually, like people who feel entitled, people feeling that they have the right to do certain things because they are doctor or because they our husband or all these things that we think normal and that are actually not necessarily consensual.
Yeah.
So where I go into the consensual world, I feel much more at ease because it is systematic and it's always very individual and subjective.
Yeah. Where can people find out more information about you, David?
My website, davidmears.com, and yeah, I'm on social media. I also have a YouTube channel. It's Hypno Sound Love. Same for Instagram, actually.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you
really
so
appreciate you
much.
speaking to me today. This is a fascinating topic.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a blast.
If you want to find out more about David Mears' work, Hypno Orgasm, or also known as Erotic Hypnosis, you can click on the video above.